Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast, and we're in August, the dog days of summer, the dog days of I am absolutely going crazy here with no hockey, but we got a little sprinkling of hockey news, including a captain that is named and has a regular team name since the team that he transferred changed theirs to something incredibly stupid. I'm Weldie here sitting with Andrew, and do you know what a Garnet Charger is?
It's a red colored phone battery charging device. I was going to try to just say that without saying charger, but that's it's redundant. But
it's like a Boost Mobile. It's like the battery pack on a Boost Mobile phone.
Yeah.
Or Hello Moto, if you remember those. Or am I just dating myself there? Singular is still around?
There you go. Yeah.
I don't know if you...
I don't know what Kevin Garnett has to do with Union College either. But I suppose with one T, that refers to the gemstone Garnet, which is like a red color, which I gather is one of their official colors.
They get around the copyright that way, I think, for Garnet. So,
yeah, it's just it's a mouthful. It's one. I think you can't have more than 3 syllables in a team nickname. Any more than that, it's just too much. It's a hat on a hat. Yeah. It is. Just go with Chargers. I mean, there's other programs that use Chargers. I don't think the San Diego Chargers have that like trademarked. Because like Huntsville used to be the Chargers. Well, I guess they still are. They just don't have a hockey team anymore. But because they said it's like, Albany has like a history of electricity producing plants or whatever. So Charger, that makes some historical sense. But putting Garnett in front of it is just, it's trying to be too cute. And it's just too much of a mouthful. I'll say, I don't really know what was wrong with Dutchman. The only thing that I can come up with as far as, it's one of those names. It's a gendered name for Union's women's team, which is like opening the season against the Huskies coming up here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, would they be like Dutch women? That's another mouthful kind of, and it sounds crass. It sounds like Dutch women sounds like something that North Dakota fans would yell as a taunt at a St. Cloud game. So
I bet they have.
Yeah, maybe something that rhymes with Dutch. But
speaking of that, kudos to Union then for not really dragging out the process. I mean, this came as a surprise to me. It was just all of a sudden, hey, by the way, we're changing our name. This is it. And then if
you're going to change your name to something stupid,
do it quick.
Is probably the best way to do it. Because if you would have announced we're retiring the name and we're crowdsourcing different ideas, and people would have been angry about why are you canceling Dutchman, and then the whole process would have been sort of a dog and pony show, and then no one would have been. People would have been unhappy again once the new nickname came out. So you just kind of rip the Band-Aid off in one right here. Change the old one, announce the new one, wipe your hands of it like the casino blackjack dealer, and then just take the guff on the website formerly known as Twitter and call it a day. So from like a crisis management standpoint, I think it's as well done.
A+ in that aspect.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I did not know Garnett was a shade of red.
I believe it's a birthstone. I think it's the January birthstone. So if you're born in January, I think that is the official birthstone of January. And again, all red, kind of like a ruby. It's like a red colored gemstone. And I think that's where the name derives from the color.
No kidding. It is the January birthstone.
See?
My birthstone's in March, or my birthday's in March. So that's why I wouldn't know that.
Was that opal?
No.
I think topaz is one. I think that's like November.
Aquamarine.
Turquoise is one, I think. I don't know why we're going over birthstones, but this is the Offseason podcast.
Yeah, right, exactly.
What's December?
December's birthstone?
Yeah, because that's my birthday.
Uh,
Sapphire?
Topaz.
It is topaz? Okay, I thought topaz was
Turquoise.
Was
Wait, why? I just Googled and they have like 3.
I think these designations aren't necessarily official. They might have evolved over the years. I'll take both of them. I'll take turquoise and topaz because they're both words that start with T. And
well, see, now I'm looking at somewhere else. It says turquoise, tanzanite, and zircon are the.
I like
birthstones.
zircon. I like.
What is zircon?
I've heard of zircon. The other one you said I hadn't heard of. What was the middle one you said there? Tanzania. Tanzanite. Never heard of that one.
Samsonite.
Zircon. I have. That's like used in some high end jewelry, and it starts with a Z, which is always fun.
Ooh.
So. But
aren't you
I'll take zircon. If I got the choice here and you give me like 5 options, I'll take zircon out of those.
Yeah, I don't know why you get so many. I'm stuck with aquamarine.
That's another cool word to say, though.
It is a cool word to say, but it just reminds me of that terrible movie from the 90s.
What, like Aquaman?
Oh, I'm sorry, not the 90s, 2006. What movie was I thinking of that was from the 90s that was of the same vein about a mermaid coming to life?
The Little Mermaid?
Little Mermaid. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I think so. It's a classic. Ariel. She's one of the better Disney princesses, if you ask me. What are we, 5 minutes in, and we're talking Disney princesses and birthstones?
Yeah, I really tried to turn this right to Dylan Anhorn, not being called a red chart.
That's right. Like, Anhorn.
That was the whole point of my start, and then we just go off the rails. But,
former like Garnet Charger. Well, I guess he wasn't a Garnet Charger. He wasn't still a Dutchman, but from Garnet to Cardinal with the Huskies.
There we go. A better shade of red.
Year, but now announced as the captain. And remind me, he was not an assistant captain last year, correct?
Correct.
So he was at the C, and then we got a couple of assistants named as well. And I'm sure you've got the notes. Okabe, I know, is one. Who else?
Molinar and Ludke.
And Lutke. I know that we speculated who was going to be the captains.
We thought for sure Sahlquist.
And that was surprising that he was not part of it. I don't know if we mentioned. I think we mentioned the others as possibilities. I don't think we mentioned Molinar though. Perhaps we did just because he is a senior, and those are a lot of times like the simplest guess. Like it's generally going to be seniors that are named captain, but I can't remember if we discussed him or not. But yeah, Sahlquist was, Larson, if the captains are selected how I think they are, which is by the team, him not having Larson's vote probably really crimped his chances. If the coaching staff had a vote, I bet you Sahlquist would have carried the day, at least with an A. But all kidding aside, it's a good group of captains, and congratulations to Anhorn in particular for slapping the C on the jersey. It's a big task.
You called back in like April. I think maybe not exactly the captaincy, but like for sure him coming back.
Well, again, as we've said, the shotgun salute,
the shotgun crutch,
the shotgun crutch was really a big tip off, as it turned out, and it was a tip off that he was going to be named a captain. We should have just put all the pieces together right there. Now, the only other piece that needs to drop is that he's a top 10 Hobie finalist at the end of the year, which is also my prediction.
Which I agree with. You know what? I'm going to go even further. If we're going to go on our wild,
he's going to win the whole thing.
I was going to say hat trick, but
okay. I still have that sneaking feeling of like a lingering injury, so I'm just going to go with top 10. But pencil yours in for sure, and listeners.
He's going to come out 4 points against St. Thomas.
Oh, he'll rack up some points against the Tigers.
So
it's too bad that we don't have Wisconsin on the schedule this year.
Oh man,
those have been nice little stat patters. Still got Mankato's kind of rebuilding. They're kind of like, well, I guess Mankato turned into Wisconsin, but the current Mankato team, it's not like they got some Wisconsin rejects themselves, but we can beat up on Mankato, I think, this year. So
yeah, well, I'm really interested in how Mankato is going to go and proceed for this season. Considering, if you want to kind of put a similarity to it is, similar to Motzko leaving for the Minnesota and, where St. Cloud was. The huge difference is that we still had a pretty loaded cabinet and there was no transfer portal.
Right.
And that's the big thing that happened. So it's going to be really interesting to see how, what path kind of Mankato ends up kind of taking here over the next couple of years.
Well, and I know
one
that
of my actually non-Husky kind of big storylines that I'm looking at, big picture.
Oh, for sure. I agreed with that because I think I said it on a previous podcast. I can't pencil in Mankato as the prohibitive favorite in the CCHA which we've done in the last several years. I just don't think they're far and away the best team in that conference anymore. They still very well might win it, but I would almost take, certainly the field other than them to win it because of just the uncertainty of who else they got back. Remind me too, when a coach leaves, I think they have had a transfer period prior to the transfer portal based on if your coach that you were recruited by took another job. I still can't remember if you still had to sit out a year in that case. Maybe they waived it if it was a coaching change exception.
I don't think so. I think you still had to sit out a year.
Well, I mean, so St. Cloud lost Bryce Brodzinski when Motzko bolted, and he was a recruit. Obviously, he wasn't on campus yet. So recruits can change commitments. Obviously, they're not. Their college eligibility clock hasn't started yet, so they don't need to sit out. And they may have lost. Did they lose any other? Certainly not another high end recruits when Motzko bolted. But I wouldn't be surprised if there were some changes. There typically are. But yeah, you're right in that the amount of attrition from that coaching change was pretty vastly different based on what's in place now with the transfer portal. It's interesting to speculate if the transfer portal was in place back in 2018 when Motzko left, if St. Cloud would have been able to rebuild into the juggernaut they continued to be in 2019 under Larson's first year. Probably not, based on it's likely that some more guys would have either followed Motzko or just found another team to play for because they weren't able to play for Motzko anymore. So yeah, that's interesting to speculate. But
if people have time, obviously after this podcast, because you don't want to miss a second of this show. But Robbie Jackson was on with McHatton on the Rink Live for an episode, and I did ask a couple of questions, and one of them that I did ask did involve that coaching change, and it was just kind of interesting to hear how Robbie kind of answered that question because he was fairly frank with it, but at the same time, you could tell he was holding back a couple of things. So it was just kind of interesting. So if you get a chance, go back to the history, kind of listen to that. Robbie obviously is one of the best personalities to put on a Husky uniform. So,
indeed.
Lukey Molinar Okabe. Okabe here is knocking on the door, I believe, of 100 points. He's at 95. I always kind of like at the beginning of the season to go like century watch, just to kind of see who's close to hitting that next milestone. So yeah, Okabe there at 95. Miettinen right now is at 83. I think everybody else is a little bit further back. So, I would imagine Okabe here is going to hit it, fairly soon into the season. If he doesn't, I think that's going to be kind of bad news for the Huskies because I don't know. We'll get in it a little bit more in our season preview podcast here in the next couple of weeks. But
where was he at? What did you say? What's his points right now?
95.
Oh yeah, he might get that in the St. Thomas weekend.
He might.
So, yeah, and mentioning seniors and how they typically assume the role of captain. The only senior that's on the roster, or I guess Okabe, I believe technically is a fifth-year player. But so fifth-year players / senior that aren't new to the team. So you got Carl Falk transferring from Alaska Fairbanks.
Carl!
And you've got...
I got to get that soundbite. Remind me to get that soundbite.
Okay. I'm not sure where it's from, but I'm sure it's a great front-heavy 70s musical.
Like what? Like Rush? Or
no, like a musical, like a Music Man. You wax poetic about your love of musicals. And the tradition bit, which that one went over my head. That was a Fiddler on the Roof reference, I believe. So what's the Carl reference from?
From The Walking Dead. It's a TV show on AMC.
Oh, what's AMC? That was a car company back in the 70s.
Yeah, it's definitely now produces shows about meth. Is kind of what AMC is.
That's really their niche right now.
Meth. Which I mean, I loved Better Call Saul. So you quit that, didn't you?
No, I finished it.
Oh,
the second half sucked, but it didn't. In total, I think you'd agree it doesn't come close to matching Breaking Bad. But no, I finished it. I plowed through it. So yeah, Ports, who I kind of swung and missed there. I thought maybe the local connection, maybe be like, Ports will be one of the captains, but he's not obviously among these named captain. So really the only returning senior for the Huskies that wasn't named captain was Vidi Miettinen and Bassie, I suppose, but goalies rarely wear letters. So not terribly surprising based on, I guess it might be surprising that it's Miettinen and not, or that Miettinen was passed over and Lutke was, the lone non-senior to be named among the captains. So mildly surprising there, but I even think that we mentioned Lukey as a possibility as well, as guys like Meyer have worn letters for multiple years. And with him being a letter wearer this year, if he sticks around for another year after that, probably good odds on chance that he's wearing the C next year. This way he can kind of get his feet wet in a captaincy role and learn from Anhorn and maybe move into that position next year. Maybe we should root against that because maybe he's had such a good year this year that he turns pro. Who knows? But keep a pin in that because I think that's a decent stab for next year's captains. But not to get too far ahead of ourselves. Congratulations on the 4 captains named for the 2023-2024 season.
And over the offseason, just in case you're wondering, Miettinen still has yet to take a penalty.
That's right.
So
0 PIM in 3 years.
PIM in 3 years.
He took a penalty, or at least a couple in juniors, because I remember checking that last year. The first time that I realized that he hadn't taken a penalty in college. So he has taken a penalty at some time in his life.
At some time, it is on the books that, yes, a penalty was taken.
And I'm sure maybe we should ask him somehow what the circumstance of that penalty was. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him to the box, but it was somebody else's that made the actual hit. The refs just screwed it up. Or if it was like a too many men penalty, shot the puck in the crowd or something. I don't know if that's a rule in USHL or not. But I'm skeptical that it was anything more than like a technical penalty. You know what I mean? Like a contact related penalty. But maybe we can verify that somehow. But yeah, still with the 0.
We should maybe have like a prop bet going on. We should each pick a ref and then be like, who is going to give him the first penalty? He's going to get some type of hokey obstruction hooking call. I mean, they don't call obstruction anymore. I'm showing my age there, but I don't know. He's going to get some kind of hokey call, 6-0 blowout victory. They just to even up some of the stats, and they give him some kind of, I don't know. We should pick a ref.
Well, we'd have to get, teams have come out, like the Huskies women's team, for instance, just came out with their freshman roster, new freshmen for this year. The men's side did the same a couple of weeks ago. We need that similar kind of press release for NCHC refs because there's always a couple that drop off and new ones that are added. And it's not like a stable roster. And it seems like some of our favorites have been kind of going by the wayside. Todd Anderson hung them up a couple years ago. Marco Hunt is like in charge of officiating and the CCHA, which just gives me shivers. But so I mean, we're losing some. I mean,
to be fair, he went to a league where they don't know when to end a game, so
I mean, it's
call
a perfect
people
fit.
back onto the it's fine.
So yeah, I the first guy that comes to mind is Tom Stearns. Drager is another one. He's kind of an over caller. Yeah, so maybe pick a ref and then pick the infraction. Like I'm thinking it could be like, as you said, like a end of the game, kind of maybe one of those scrums where they just give out like 3 penalties aside at the 19-minute mark of a 6-2 game. And maybe he's just nicked for something that he really didn't do, but the refs just like, well, we're just going to even it up. We're not making a power play for anybody, but we just got to put our foot down and get control of the game. It might be something like that where it's going to be like Mietin wasn't even on the ice and be like, what, why me? But it's just, because I'm skeptical that it's going to be anything really egregious that he earns the penalty.
It's kind of interesting. I'm just kind of going through the box scores right now. I don't know a lot of these refs, and maybe that's for the best.
It seems to have been some more turnover in recent years. Like Binda, I remember he was a ref for a while, but he's no longer reffing in the conference.
Okay, Tim Walsh sounds familiar.
Yeah, Walsh is there.
But
he's
Sullivan,
a pick. Yeah, Sullivan.
Hersey?
Not so familiar with him.
Sullivan and Hersey did the championship game at the Frozen Face-Off. Did Sullivan also do, because the NCHC refs had the NCAA title game. I think Sullivan might have been one of the refs for the title game. You can check that because he's the guy after Quinnipiac scores the game winner. He's like sliding and he knocked over the ref like in the follow through of scoring the goal. And it's a funny clip because the ref like is trying to stop himself from falling, but there's nothing he can do. The kind of gets crashing into the boards and he goes like ass over head. Mm-hmm. I think that might have been Sullivan, but I know it certainly was an NCHC crew for the title. Yeah, Sullivan and Hersey were the refs in that game.
I think it was Sullivan, but it may have been Hersey. I'm not familiar with
that.
Name,
I totally forgot up until now.
How could you forget? If you were like me, you were looping that game-winning goal for like 60.
Well, not the goal. I forgot.
Hours.
I forgot how much they let off the gas. What was Moscow doing? They were outshot 14-2 in the third.
Go back to the last podcast of the regular season, or I guess the one that we would recap the title game. Because we spent a lot of that podcast just marveling at the Moscow stall that he implemented there and kind of the two halves of the game. But it's a classic. That one's going to be at least just the game winner, or just the puck drop in overtime. It's just 10 seconds.
Just the whole 10 seconds in overtime will kind of do it. So, just to kind of put a bow then on the freshman coming in, that was made official, and pretty much I think we were right on the money with everyone. No surprise, Warren Clark was able to kind of sneak in there. A righty defenseman, which I'm always really excited for. Then there's Tynan Ewert, Tyson Gross, Barrett Hall, Werner Miettinen, Jack Ryman, Caleb Thiessen, and then Isaac Posh is the goalie. So,
who was the righty defenseman that you mentioned? Was that Clark?
Clark.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, it's certainly an intriguing freshman class. Obviously, of the most intriguing, I think they're all sort of intriguing, but I'm especially excited to see Clark, draft pick by the Lightning this summer, and then also excited to see of the forwards. I think Barrett Hall is the most intriguing for me. Also a draftee. He was drafted last year, but then some of these later commits like that Ewert, who committed fairly late. I'm going to say like May or something, just a couple of months ago. He had a great year in Canadian juniors. And so he seems like I wouldn't expect Clark to rack up a bunch of points or maybe even play every game. Like he might be scratched, at least in the early part of the season, a decent amount just because he's, so young, and it's going to take him a little bit to acclimate to the older league with the NCHC. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's more of a part-time player just to start, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he asserts himself and becomes a regular towards the end of the year. But I'm not going to expect even like a 10-point season offensively from him. Whereas a guy like Ewert, who is older and seasoned from the junior standpoint, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not going to say he's going to be Anhorn 2.0, but I wouldn't be surprised he gets power play time and 15, 20 points. I don't think that's unreasonable to expect, and because he's a guy with a track record of lots of success. I believe in was it Alberta or Manitoba? It was one of those two leagues, I believe, that he was playing in, but big part of their championship winning team. It was Saskatchewan. So I knew it was one of the prairie provinces, but solid career
one
there.
Of those,
and
I mean, I don't know if it's harsh or not, but I'm starting to call those the wildfire provinces.
It's true. So
if our air quality has anything to say about it.
That's right, because that's kind of it really screwed with your guys' air quality for a while for those fires in Canada. That's right. So yeah, it's
and now we're in an excessive heat warning. So it's
we're
supposed
cooling
to be
off a little bit. It hasn't been up to 100 in a couple of days. I actually went for an outside run on Saturday. I've been doing just treadmill for the last month plus, but actually
we got outside. We're I think 96, 98. We're flirting with
that's
definitely
what we get. So
but it's a dry heat.
It is. You don't really get the humidity that you guys do. So, and the bugs. That's another plus. But hot's hot. So hopefully you can beat the heat.
So one thing that I found was kind of interesting in the write-up from McHatton is so it does look like we are shifting over Ingram to center.
Really? Okay, I missed that. But
to start off the season,
I think a good move. I had speculated that earlier, and I think that might be a position that clicks with him. We'll see. And again, that's another one where I wouldn't be surprised if he does do some shuffling, particularly on like a power play situation. He may play a wing on a power play here or there, or if it just doesn't work out like it did. He didn't really find as much success at center last year than maybe we were hoping. But with that freshman year under his belt,
it's tough as a freshman coming in as a center.
So I think that might be a good decision, and I'm glad to hear that they're at least willing to try him back there, because I think that could click.
And that's where, so that has Ingram and Salquist. Those are our two centers. And then the other centers, just by the looks of it, are going to be between the freshmen. Werner Miettinen, Tyson Gross, Jack Ryman. Riemann or Ryman? I gotta straighten that out.
Let's go with Ryman for now.
Ryman? Perfect. Ryman.
We should know, because my name has RIE at the start as well, and it's Reese, so maybe I should be consistent here. But everyone that calls us, they think like, is Mr. Rise available? That's not my name, but
so then do you just say no?
I say Reese.
Just say no. It's not me.
I haven't had one of those. I don't really get the robocalls that I used to, but it's understandable. Like lies, like usually IE will have the long I sound, so I get it. But so so Ryman, he played center in juniors. I think we have 3 guys among the forwards that have center experience at the junior level, I think.
Yeah.
Also Rosborough on the team. I know he has played some, thinking of Doug Risebrough, but it's a different human being. But I know he had some center experience, at least in juniors, and then I think in his first year, which he barely played, I think he had some ice time at center. Last year, I'm not sure if he played any center, but he's a guy that has some experience at the position, and if he is out of the doghouse, which I'm not sure of, because he really didn't play anything after the North Dakota Road Series last year, which is like the last month and a half. If he is getting ice time, I wouldn't be surprised, especially if the other options are freshmen. I wouldn't be surprised if Rosborough gets an opportunity to have some center ice time. So we'll see. They have options. It's just I'm a little anxious because relying on freshmen in this league, the Big Ten, you can get away with that because it's a young league. But the NCHC, older league like this, it's hard to rely on freshmen in such key roles. But if we've got some experience at the top end of the depth chart, that at least gives me some hope that they're not going to be exposed to the extent of playing against other teams' top lines, for instance. So certainly keep an eye on that, and it'd be interesting how it all shakes out. Like at the end of the year, which are the 4 guys that have had the most center time. Pretty sure about Salquist. But even all the others, like it's really up in the air, and it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Kind of reminds me of Rosborough is going to go the Nick Ryu career path, where did something and Motzko didn't like, and then didn't touch the ice the rest of his career.
Was he he played a lot his freshman year and then never played again? Because then he had the opposite guys like Craig Gaudet.
Oh, good day,
didn't play until his senior year, and then he was basically an every game defenseman. I mean, props to him for sticking it out till the end. But I think Clark Kuster also kind of had that path. Barely played his first 3 years, and then played that 1920 season, his last year, played a fair amount, if not every game. And so
Ryu played 3 years, 08-09, 23 games played, and then 1 game and then 2 games.
Really?
Yep.
I remember him more than I should based on that amount of game time. Like 25 games, and I still remember the name. It feels weird, but yeah, you don't get on. We mentioned that, like in terms of like Ben Storm, or you get in the doghouse with Motzko. It's a tough task to get out of it, to right the ship after that. But we don't have to deal with that anymore. That's a Gopher problem now. So
yeah, exactly. Which speaking of
segue.
You did mention his name there, so I've got to go ahead and issue a correction. Don't I have a correction soundbar button here, or did I not?
I don't remember, but I know that you were working on expanding out that button bar.
Here we go.
You done messed up,
Ron. Yep.
There we go. My wife, my lovely wife, filled out what am I'm blanking on my Google form for the all snub team.
Snub team.
Yep, exactly. She was like, I don't know if I could name, this many former hockey players, and then she just rattled off just a bunch of them out of nowhere. So I said, fill out the form, and one of them was Big Ben Storm. And then apparently she wasn't. Apparently we had a little chuckle at the fact that he was on the list. So I made fun of my wife in that instance. So I want to apologize to her.
I think I laughed like uncontrollably for like a few seconds
for not including or for laughing at Big Ben Storm, and also not saying Big Ben Storm, because that had to been like contractually on every game. Like he had to be called Big Ben Storm, not just Ben Storm.
This is true. It's in the contract.
Like no matter what, too. Like no matter if it was a home game, if it was Jim Rich calling, or if it was anywhere in a away game, if it was Starman, it didn't matter. He was always Big Ben Storm.
Pretty on the nose. You didn't really have many choices for a nickname with him. But yeah, speaking of storms, if you heard what sounded like a gunshot just now, that was actually like the loudest clap of lightning thunder that I've ever experienced, and I don't know if the microphone picked that up, but that was just like I saw the lightning come in, and that just sounded like a firework. That was lightning.
I thought that was your refrigerator making noises.
I got a faulty refrigerator too. So yeah, it might be some weird noises in the background, other than the weird noise of my voice.
The ghosts of the off season.
Yeah, bear with me if you do hear some weird stuff in the background. But
so obviously, we haven't seen these freshmen play or these incoming freshmen play, so we just have speculation here. But obviously with the brother connection, I would assume we're going to start out with the Mietnins on the same line, and then just kind of fill out the rest. And
because Mietnin has Werner has center experience, right?
Correct.
I wonder what who's going to take the opening draw, like that first line. Maybe the two Mietnins and Okabe. I don't know. Like it'd be interesting to see who is on that first line, but yeah, I think it's a good freshman.
Oh man, we should predict the first line too. I'm going Sahlquist.
We already predicted Sahlquist would be taking that opening draw.
He's going to take off, and then it's going to be with Kupka and let's put Ports out there. Why not?
Yeah, I like it. Kupka, I guess he's another one of the freshmen or seniors that didn't get picked as captain. I forgot about him. College Hockey News, their roster is complete trash. There's players that aren't coming in. There's players like Brady Zemer listed, and then guys like Kupka aren't listed. Okabe either. So just a horrendous set of information here on the world's leading college hockey news website. So I know it's summer, but get it together, Woden.
Don't tweet him at that though, because he'll come up with a litany of excuse responses back to you about why. Oh man, you talk to him about the app or anything. Yeah. Oh, it's almost comical how many excuses he'll just kind of come up with why it's not his fault. But also women who I think actually started practice. Again, we're not going to know a lot about the incoming fresh faces for the women's team. But Jaden Britt, defenseman from Illinois, Sydney Bryant from Traverse City, Grace Delmonico from Egan, who piled up a ton of points at Gentry Academy. So I'm kind of really excited to see what she is going to offer. Greta Henderson, another one that had a lot of points in Saskatchewan. She had 58 goals and 144 points in 58 games. So, I mean,
it's not bad.
That's all right. So Paige Hugendam, from goalie from Ontario, Kenzie Hope, defenseman from British Columbia, Marie Moran from Lakeville, who was kind of a playmaker there for the Apple Valley Eagles. So it's just what they're building. What Adolski is kind of building there. I've got a lot of hype kind of coming for this team. I'm really excited to see what the women's teams what they can accomplish this year.
Yeah, I think it's about. We mentioned they're playing Union to start the year off, and that's still in September. They get an earlier start to the year than the men do. So yeah, I would not surprise that we're coming up with practices because the regular season is not too far away, and it's in the 90-degree weather of summer. It's a nice reminder that hockey's not too far away if we've got St. Cloud practices starting.
God, I gotta imagine the ice at the National Hockey Center is just slush. With that refrigeration, trying to keep
those
it
nets
cold
are coming off a lot.
Yeah,
practice. The moorings aren't holding. I wonder if that's going to be an issue this coming year, or if they did anything to address that in the off season, because that was a much too frequent problem last year. And it'd be nice if that didn't happen to the extent that it did. And So we'll see if that is the case. Also, alongside the freshmen that were announced,
we should have another over-under on that. We should have.
Yeah.
You know what? Next podcast, I'm going to come up with prop bets.
Do some. Yeah, I like that.
And then
I think that's a good idea.
And then we'll go. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah, let's come up with some good categories, and we could certainly have some fun with that.
Yeah. If you guys have categories or prop bet ideas, go ahead and at More Clappers, MOAR Clappers.
Yep, September 23rd against the Union Garnett Chargers at home at the Herb. So circle that date. It's when the women start. And alongside the freshmen.
What time's that at? Is that at 7?
I don't have that on me. I'm just looking at Mick's article here. I would assume it's at a night game because obviously the men don't play until October. So they would have the building themselves. I don't know why they wouldn't play at night. So we'll keep you up to date as far as what the game time is.
We just do not have times listed, do we?
I don't think we have times for any of the men's games either. In the abyss of college hockey summertime, you mentioned before the show, Big Ten still hasn't announced any schedule, much less.
Yeah, the conference schedule for the Big Ten
released, other than the ones that have been announced by their opponents.
Come on, Woden. Jeez.
But yeah, aside from the freshman class that you just announced for the women, a slew of transfers. 5 transfers announced earlier this offseason, and they just picked up another one. Avery Farrell from Franklin Pierce University was their leading scorer I don't even know what Franklin Pierce's nickname was. The Franklin Pierce Terrible Presidents. That's the Union-esque mouthful nickname that I'm going to.
What was he, the 12th president? Franklin
Lincoln was 16. He was 2 before, so 14. I'm going to say
14. He was after Millard Fillmore.
All of those 1850s presidents were god awful. Buchanan is the only sort of saving grace for Pierce not to be the worst president in American history. He was very bad president. I'm surprised that his name still graces the name of a university based on sort of the modern trend of scrubbing out names of bad people in history. But I'll take a prop bet on that Franklin Pierce University will be renamed by the end of this decade. You can write that one down.
All right.
I mean, if they're going to rename, they renamed something from Woodrow Wilson based because he has an affiliation with, he used to be the president of Princeton University, and they renamed some building in Princeton a couple years ago. Wilson himself, I would put in the top 3 worst presidents of all time as well. And so if they're going to do it with Wilson, they can do it with Pierce, who I would say was worse than Wilson, although Wilson was terrible too. But it's I've got more to say about Franklin Pierce than I do the president than I do Avery Farrell. But it looks like a good pickup, and I think that she'll help the Huskies this coming year.
I don't think it'll hurt. Yeah.
Nope.
And that's where, the Huskies for quite a long time have really lacked some of that offensive firepower. Usually when they've won those games, they've kind of hung on to a shot disparity of 45-7, but they were able to win off the backs of the amazing goaltending that we've had over the past decade. It feels like
with the women's team, we got an addition to the coaching staff.
Oh, that's right.
What was your favorite Billy Hengen moment?
Well,
in his time.
Thank you for bringing that up, because guess what I've got here? Random box score time. We got a random box score time.
All right.
Which I guess kind of cheapens it. That's not really random because Is
it the 8-7 game?
It is not the 8-7 game. I felt that was too cliche.
That would be not random at all.
Yeah.
What was his years? Was he 03 to 07? Something like that. What was his time period? for the Huskies?
Let me.
Was he maybe 04?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think he came a year before I was on campus, but I'm not positive.
Let me take a look here. 02.
Oh, really? Came in that early. So 02 to 06?
Yep.
So he would have been a senior on that 8-7 game team. Okay, I thought he played a little. I thought he was a little younger than that, but wasn't too far off. So what's the box score you got?
I just want to double check my work here because I am a thorough journalist.
Yeah, very important here to nail this segment.
We can't disgrace the great names here of Billy Hengen. Yes, correct. 14 games as a freshman, 2 assists in the 02-03 season.
Which still was they were a tournament qualifying team that year. So, but then, and then the 03-04 year, they were close. That was the year they sort of collapsed at the end.
Which is what I got the box score from.
03-04?
Yep.
Okay, so you were probably at this game because this was your freshman year, right?
I was at this game.
Because I wasn't on campus until 04. So I want to hear if you have any personal recollections from the story, or
I remember this series to me is it just kind of sticks out to me.
All right, well, lay it on me.
And I think this series was actually kind of like, I wouldn't say it's the beginning of the end, because we did end up winning the next 4 afterwards. But it's January 23rd against Minnesota State Mankato. And at this time, Minnesota State was atrocious. They were bad.
Was this like a 7-6 barn burner?
Like
St. Cloud blew a huge lead.
We'll get to it.
Okay, all right. I know in that time period there were some wild Mankato St. Cloud games.
Yep, and this is definitely one. John Campion was the ref.
Okay.
6,300 was the attendance.
So at St. Cloud.
At St. Cloud, 8-5 victory for the Huskies.
Okay.
St. Cloud won the total shots, 43-26. St. Cloud State went 4 for 11 on the power play. So
it's a lot of penalties. Campion was keeping a tight ship that game. Let me guess. Jason Montgomery in net?
Nope. Adam Kuhl started the Friday.
He came from Duluth.
He did come from Duluth. Yep.
So this is the Friday game, or you're saying that this is the Saturday?
This is the Friday game because we'll get to the Saturday game, which is why I was kind of like, this might be.
So we're actually doing the box score, the random box score is Saturday. You're just doing the context.
No, the random box score is the Friday because the Friday was the Billy Hengen show.
Oh, all right. Game of his life.
Yep, pretty much. 2 goals, 2 assists. There, he
nice.
centered Matt Hendricks and Brock Hooten.
Okay.
So it's
Hendricks, Hooten, and Hengen. It's the Triple H.
Yep, Triple H line.
Was that actually a name? Because
that's what I called it.
You actually did call it that.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I can make it makes a lot of sense. You wrestling and
exactly. So,
yeah.
It was, and then anytime like the puck dropped with them, I said it's time to play the game. Which I think wrestling
was that his catchphrase?
No, that Triple H's entrance. It's time to play the game. That's kind of how. Yeah, it was great. So Bacchus opened the scoring. Sure. Casey Moore took the first penalty of the game, 2 minutes for obstruction holding. And then a little bit later, Ryan Lemaire took a penalty for obstruction holding.
Lots of obstruction.
Oh, God, we are peak obstruction.
And this would have been Campion working solo. Back then, there was just one ref, right?
Yep.
So
and I think his whole thought process was, oh yeah, there's obstruction there. Let's call obstruction. Again, my favorite, obstruction interference, which is from the Department of Redundancy department.
So he said 11 power plays for the Huskies. How many for Mankato?
4 for 11 on the power play, 2 for 6 for Mankato.
So yeah, a crap ton of calls.
Yep, exactly. So Fletcher from Lumbaum and Larson tied it up, and then we enter the second period.
What was it? Wait, what was the score after the first?
1-1. Okay. Normal game.
Yep.
Normal game. Ryan Lemaire takes a penalty for holding the stick. And then 30 seconds later, Dave Iannazzo scores the shorthanded goal.
There you go.
And then about 30 seconds later, Shane Joseph ties the game on a power play goal.
He was good. He was like our best. Well, I mean, if you're saying Backus is on the team,
Backus and Joseph.
I bet you Joseph led the team in scoring. He had, maybe it was this year or the year before. Mankato was good one of these years. You said that did they say what the record was?
After this game, they were 4-15.
Okay, so not good this year. Maybe it was the year before. I know they made it to the tournament with Backus and Joseph. That may have been the year before. They lost to Cornell in the tournament.
I think they were. Did they have Abel on that team too? Because I think that might have been before.
It's possible. It was sometime in the early 2000s they made the tournament and got smoked by Cornell. But I was fairly sure that Shane Joseph was on that team. But
about a minute and a half later, Garrett Larson scores. Huskies are up 3-2. Tie game again. Chad Clower scored about a minute and a half later. Minute and a half after that, power play goal by Peter Szabo. Assisted by Joe
what's the
Jensen.
Score at this point? What are we
It was 3-3 at that point. So Szabo made it 4-3.
And we're still early in the second period.
Yeah. Well, that was at the 6-minute mark. 5:50 was the penalty.
I'd say that's early.
Yeah, and then Hengen took over. Is kind of where I'm getting at here, because power play, second assist, Szabo from Jensen and Hengen, and then a little bit later, a couple minutes later in the period, Hengen from Szabo and Lemaire, and then Jensen from Hengen and Lemaire rounded out that period.
And this is all in the second period.
All in the second period. All of that happened, and those last three goals were on the power play.
And you said one was a shorty as well.
Iannazzo's to start the period was a shorty. Yep.
So 8 goals, 5 of them special teams.
Correct.
Or do we have even more coming up?
7. 7 goals, 5 special teams.
I thought you said it was 8-5. Was there an empty netter?
Oh no, that was 7 goals total were scored in the second period.
Oh, I'm saying for St. Cloud total in the game, how many special teams goals? Was it just for the 4 power play goals and the 1 shorty? So it'd be nice if there was like a penalty shot in there or some other like non-even strength goal. But if Campion was in charge,
four power play goals, 1 shorthanded goal.
Okay.
Yep. And then Iannazzo. Then in the third period, it was Iannazzo from Hendricks, and then Clower with his second from Joseph and Backus, and then Sorensen made it 5-7. But the insurance goal at the end, Billy Hengen, Brock Hooten.
And that was not an empty netter. That was
not an empty netter.
Okay. So yeah, no cheapies.
So yeah, 4-point game for Billy Hengen. 2 goals, 2 assists.
Hats off to Hengen.
Yeah, well, close. Only 2 goals.
I suppose, yeah. Being a stickler about it.
There. So the next game, again, St. Cloud's Mankato's just not very good. And St. Cloud comes out flat. And this game, we started Montgomery in net.
Okay.
Now, Montgomery in net was kind of interesting because he didn't play a ton. This was only his 5th game so far in the season, and we're through January. This is the last.
So it was
season.
mostly cool
up to this point. Cool up until this point. Yeah. And Mankato 3-0. About midway through the first period, and then Billy Luger scored, who I totally forgot existed. And then Ionazo scored another shorthanded goal.
Good weekend for him. Born to score.
Born to score, exactly. Billy Hangen assisted on that Ionazo shorthanded goal. And you youngsters.
Another short too.
Like, Ionazo was fun to watch. I don't know, really what I could compare him to now, just because also the game is so completely different. But as far as, a pure game-breaking ability, a little bit of daylight, he was gone. And he was a dynamic player. Which is why this season just baffles me so much. But and then second, so okay, bad start, down 3 rip, 3-2. Tim Conboy scores 45 seconds in. All right, we're right back in it, right? Andy Lumbaum scores 4-3. All right, hey, we're coming back. It's a bad team. We're riding high. And then the wheels kind of fall off here. Mankato ties it up on a power play really late in the second period. Ionazo does score again to make it 5-4. And then Clower scored. Who
good
I think this was
for him.
Good weekend for him, and this was only his 3rd goal of the season. And so he scored all of his goals so far against St. Cloud State. Ionazo takes a penalty for high sticking, and Mankato scores the next 2 goals within a minute and a half of each other.
So what was the final?
To go up 7-5, and then Fletcher gets one late to make it 7-6, but we lose 7-6.
So yeah, I remembered some real high scoring affairs between these two teams back in those days, and I think there was a game maybe within the next year or two on either side of it where St. Cloud had a 5-goal lead and they blew it against Mankato, which maybe I'll do that research anywhere. Is the name Adam Gerlach in any of that box score for Mankato? Not sure if he was still there. I think he might have been a little earlier, but he's from my hometown. I knew his brother. Mankato had a couple of guys from my hometown that played on them. Jared Stewart, if you remember that name.
Yep,
more later, sort of later aughts. But he was from Hastings as well. But yeah, those are always fun games against those two teams. And it sounds like it was rowdy, lots of penalties, lots of goals, back and forth action. Kind of
I do have to make
matchup.
A quick little addendum. When I said Adam Cool, and I said, yeah, and Montgomery only played a few games up until that point. Tim Boron also. So Adam
really?
Cool and Tim Boron kind of split, and Montgomery still got 6 games.
So it was really a 3-way kind of tandem between the three of them.
It was a 3-way kind of battle.
And no one really emerged.
Save percentage. The highest was Adam Cool at a 902. So,
yeah, playing 8-5 and 7-6 games.
That's not going to
do that to your stats.
Yeah, and then of course 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the season was 7 straight losses, 4 to Minnesota.
Well, hopefully we can bottle the energy, not of that 7-game losing streak, but of Billy Hengen's series of his life, and bring that to the assistant coaching position that he is now in for the St. Cloud State women's hockey team. Congratulations on the hire, and excited for your contributions.
I just maybe
where's he from? By the way?
maybe I'm giving this team maybe like a little bit too much flack.
What, the 03-04 team?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty epic collapse. I mean,
it
stop
is.
me if I'm wrong, but they were, I mean, if they didn't fall flat on their face, just went like maybe 3-4, they could have made a tournament that year, right? I mean, they were in position to make the tournament.
True. They were in position, and they like the whole reason is like we needed 1 point or maybe 2 points in the last 4 games of the season to get home ice. And then Minnesota was able to sneak it from us in a series against Minnesota. So then we had to play at Mariucci. Right. But I mean, these losses 3-0, 7-1, 5-2, 7-4, 4-2, 6-1, 7-3. So like the wheels, everything went to hell. But then again, I mean, the losses were, we got swept at Wisconsin. We lost 2 games at home to CC. And that CC team had, Stewart and Surdich and Serling and Sweat.
Was it Sania? Or he ran
McElhenney
before? No, Peter Sania. Did he win the Holy?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Sania probably would have been gone by this point. But
yeah, he was gone by then.
But yeah, they were bringing in great guys like year after year.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, yeah, McElhenney was solid for them in net.
Yeah. And then obviously Vanek, I think, just pretty much tore us up that series, or even the last 4 games. I think we didn't have any answer for Vanek and Danny Ehrman and Troy Riddle, Keith Ballard. So I'm sorry, Billy Hengen. What'd you say? Where's he from?
Where's he from? I know he's Minnesota, right?
Yep, Eden Prairie.
I was gonna say Lakeville, but it's one of those suburbs.
One of those
they all kind of blend together, right?
Yeah, exactly. So congrats.
Yes.
Obviously to him, and he, we can say what we want about Gentry Academy and everything along those lines. People have their opinions, but it's, he has had a lot of, good experience there, and he's going to obviously continue to have good experience here for the, under Adalski and definitely grow. And again, I'm really excited for where this team ends up going.
Agreed.
So, I guess, as we were reminiscing hard about, Ehrman and Barry Talixon and Gino Geyer of the Gopher teams, I guess there's a Gopher player that's going to be playing in your neck of the woods a little bit more often.
Yes. Yeah. He wasn't, talking about Logan Cooley. Not a Minnesotan, talking about Hengen being a Minnesotan. Cooley from Pennsylvania, I believe, like Pittsburgh area. His short time in Minnesota, he really grasped the concept of the Midwestern goodbye. Where, okay, I'm ready to leave. See you guys. It was really fun. And then an hour later,
and then 4 months go
cracked
by.
Another beer, and you're back on the couch. Because, it was all, after the national title game, hey, unfinished business, and Hobie, and I'm coming back, baby. And then...
Well, and then that was right after the, Arizona's referendum failed or anything along those lines.
Yeah, that's right. So it wasn't immediately after the title game, because it was timed like a day or two after it was announced that Arizona's plan to get some public funding in Tempe. When that fell through, shortly after that, that's when Cooley said, I'm coming back to the Gophers. So maybe that was May, I'm going to say. So it was maybe a month after the national title game. But still,
I got the tweet saved from when
when he announced
Minnesota,
that he's returning.
When the Minnesota Gopher Hockey Twitter said he's coming back.
And what was the date on that?
And then I remember, and then I said, and then what happened?
Because, it was at least 2-3 months in between that announcement and then his announcement of saying, well,
May.
This NHL paycheck, it was May. So,
May
this
19th.
NHL paycheck concept, maybe that doesn't sound too bad. Instead of having an NIL deal with Chipotle to get free burritos, maybe I'll cash it in for a couple $1 million with an entry-level deal. it looks like, obviously he's been placated by, Arizona's trying, I think they're now trying in Mesa to buy some land to try to build a facility there. So they're still putting in the good fight as far as wanting to stick around Arizona. And to their credit, they seem like they might be decent this coming year. Perhaps that changed his mindset as well. I still think whether or not they're good or bad, he's going to have plenty of ice time available for him because they are still, I would still classify them as rebuilding. They're not emptying the cupboards, tanking bad. They're just sort of, meh bad to middling to maybe like a surprise wild card contender. It's probably where they have risen to at this point. So, I mean, tough for the Gophers because him dilly-dallying for the month before he announced he's coming back, and then in the 3 months after he announced he's coming back and then said, well, I'm actually going to go. There was this thing called the transfer portal that they could have used to replace a guy of his caliber. I suppose they could have done that whether or not he was coming back or not, but especially if they were aware of him not being on the team next year, perhaps the priority of them wanting to replace a top end guy, because there were a handful of real kind of high end point producing prospects that were available in the portal. And there's really no way for them to replace him on the roster through the transfer portal this late in the game. And so it kind of hung them out to dry a little bit. And I'm sure guys like Motzko and Gopher fans are a little salty about that aspect of it, about having to wait so long, say that you're committing back into the program and then backing out months later. Probably didn't sit well with some folks, but it's hard for me. It's hard to turn down such a lucrative offer that I'm sure he was getting. So, I mean, it's understandable, but just
not having to do homework.
Not having to do homework. I'm not sure if he had to do a whole lot of that anyway, but
Clem Haskins style.
Jan Gangelhoff do right in the papers for him. So rest in peace, Jan. And maybe, I don't know if you had anything to add to that. We had one implication you were mentioning to me, the Alex Bump situation. Gopher fans thought they may have gotten a replacement for Cooley in that case, but
there was scuttlebutt. It's like, that's okay that Cooley's gone because Bump's going to be here. Like, it was, that Bump, was in the transfer portal from Vermont, widely connected. Like, there was just so much Gopher fans, their hubris was strong with them. I will say that, with the fact that they thought Bump, just pencil him in. He's already going to be here. Well,
I'm sure that hubris took a hit when they realized that Western Michigan isn't the same as Minnesota. That's a different school, because that's where Alex Bump ended up committing to. We should back up a little bit. He was originally committed to Vermont, who recently announced maybe a month ago that their coach, Todd Woodcroft, is fired. Sounds like some improper communication with a member of the opposite sex. And so he gone and hired a replacement for him already. And so some of the prospects in the pipeline commits, with the coaching change, we mentioned that earlier. Certainly nowadays, if you do have a coaching change, you're not bound to the time limits that the transfer portal normally restricts on potential transfers, because that window is only open for 60 days or so from the end of the season till around mid-May, maybe 6 weeks. But if at any time in the offseason a coach decides to move on, any commits or current players that were on that team are the window of eligibility to enter the transfer portal opens in those special cases. And so Bump was unexpectedly available as he was coming in next year, slated to come in this fall to Vermont. And he was a hot commodity in the transfer portal because he racked up a great career at Prior Lake, put on a real show at the state tournament. I think last year, it wasn't this year. I think it was last year. I think he spent a year in juniors in 22-23, but coming in to campus this year and yeah, as you said, the writing seemed to be on the wall that the Gophers could scoop him up, but instead he picks Pat Ferschweiler and Western Michigan, which I thought was a bit of a surprise. And props to Ferschweiler. The guy is a great recruiter. I think players really want to play for him. They're a very interesting team, and so we wanted to mention this because it does have implications for the NCHC, because obviously Western Michigan's in the conference, and we'll be seeing some of Alex Bump in the near future. And I said Western's an intriguing team because they again lost like their top 5 scorers, which they also did last year. They were able to reload this year based on freshmen like Ryan McAllister having a great year, guys like Jason Pollan being a Hobie finalist, and what was it, Sasson having a great year. All those guys are gone, and I like Ferschweiler, and I think he's a coach who, in his short 2-year tenure there as head coach, has shown an ability to reload. Now, can he do it for a second straight year with another new crop of, again, he's very active in the transfer portal again this year, and also with freshmen. I remember you mentioning a couple of podcasts ago, you're thinking maybe Western's due for a little dip. I'm not going to say that Alex Bump is going to make the difference for them to bump up the standings. See what I did there? But I think they're a team that I trust more than, let's say, like Omaha, who hasn't consistently been able to repeat on quality performances team-wide year to year, year after year. And so I'm not even sure. We're going to have our season preview podcast coming up sometime in the next month, 6 weeks. I really could go several different slots with Western. I don't know where to put them. And this move is part of that sort of uncertainty regarding them. They could be pretty good. They could also dip too. I'm not sure. Where are you thinking that Western stands, particularly after the news of them scooping up Alex Bump?
I mean, I'm with you on that. For some reason, Omaha really intrigues me. I mean, yeah, and when I look at it, is like the NCHC right now just has so many question marks. Kind of up and down the list, and obviously we'll get into that with all of our predictions and prop bets that we're gonna have. But like, you know, I was about to make the joke on Twitter, or X. I'm gonna call it Twitter for the rest of my life. I don't care. Call me a boomer. But like, the Fighting Hawks announced their captains, and I was going to tweet out, yeah, those are the only people that stayed. Of course, those are captains. But that wasn't true because the transfer from Michigan was one of their captains. So I couldn't even make that joke. They didn't have enough to fill out. So it was, you know, but
I forget, is Gaber still there?
Yes.
Yep. And was he one of the captains?
Gaber's the captain.
Okay. All right. Sucks for St. Cloud because he seems to always kill us. But.
Yeah, he does. But so all of those, like, I mean, North Dakota, I have no clue. I have no clue.
Yeah, they're another just complete.
I could see, you know, there's
a black
so
box.
much.
I have no idea what to expect with them.
There's so much hype around the recruits coming in for CC of all teams that I'm seeing. Omaha, like I said, Omaha intrigues me more than they intrigue you. I figured that was going to be the case.
Because I'm always sort of down on Omaha.
Yeah.
But they surprised me last year, and they certainly could do it again. Like, it's similar to last year where the only team I'm confident about placing them in the standings is Miami at 8. Yeah. Everything else is in limbo. And it's going to be really interesting how I decide to pick them at the beginning of the year and it's probably going to be very wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what makes it exciting.
I'm probably going to have Denver at 1 and gross.
I'm leaning, this probably is bad news because of my general pessimism, but I am leaning towards maybe the hometown team being my number 1. So talk me out of that if you don't want me to curse the Huskies.
Wow. All right.
I'm feeling good about this team, which probably is not a good sign.
That's not a good. That's really well. Guess what? Because I'm got a lot of questions about this team, and it really is down the middle.
What team don't we have questions about?
I mean, that's
we just
true.
listed them off. I mean, Duluth. I guess they're the only team we didn't really mention, and they're a giant question mark too. So,
yeah,
this will be fun.
Yeah. This season's going to be a whirlwind. I think it's going to be one of those. Also, we're going to beat on each other a lot in conference, but that might mean we only get 2 teams in the national tournament, maybe 3. And that's, I mean, things change in college hockey. This happens. I mean, ebbs and flows. We've got a really long run here of dominance in the NCHC. I think that slips away here pretty big this season.
Well, and we saw.
I would honestly put the over under. I mean, for smart.
We got 3 teams in last year. Or are you saying less, more, or push?
I'm saying that Vegas would probably put the over under at 3.5. I would. Right. I would say even 2.5. I would have.
Well, if you're giving me 2.5, I'll go over on that. Yeah. On 3.5, I might go under. I think 3 is a good number.
3
I still think that the East is still sort of in a down period. Maybe that sounds weird because Quinnipiac came from the East and they won the tournament last year. But Hockey East, we can say the same thing about Hockey East, that's probably true. More so than we would about the NCHC. And it seems like the West still has the upper hand when it comes to at-large spots in the tournament. So do I trust because the way that NCHC is not going to get 3 teams in is if Hockey East and ECAC have better years than they have in the past. And I'm not sure if I'm confident enough. Not that I have followed their movement terribly close. Certainly not as much as I have the Western teams. But just based on the last, 5-6 years, it's more of a safe bet to assume that the Western leagues have more of a upper hand. And the fact that the Big Ten was so good last year, majority of their non-conference, if we're not talking about Penn State, who loads up on Atlantic hockey teams in non-conference, NCHC has plenty of opportunities to win non-conference games against Big Ten teams, which would then help their pairwise chances as well. And so I think 3 is what I'll go with. But if you're going to say under 2.5, that's intriguing. I would certainly go over that. I'll put it that way.
I'm trying to think, and I don't remember off the top of my head. And what was the big? Who had the big drop of people getting in? I think it was Hockey East, right? They were positioned around January.
They had got teams like Lowell tanked. UMass tanked.
Merrimack.
Merrimack, but they ended up making it, but they did fall quite a bit. Yeah, was it just them and BU that made it from that league? Yeah, Providence also tanked.
Connecticut tanked.
UConn tanked. They're maybe the biggest team to fall completely out.
Yeah.
So, it was and part of that was part of the teams that scooped up those spots was ECAC, which had a down year, but they got 4 teams in. Or is it because they got Quinnipiac, Harvard, Cornell, and Colgate, because Colgate won the tournament and then got smoked by Michigan.
Yeah.
But that was not a conference that was really worthy of 4 teams. It just sort of Cornell snuck in there and Colgate kind of magically won the tournament. And so I think they sort of stole a spot from Hockey East or Alaska too. They were right on the fringes of making it and one of the last teams out. But so if those programs that we just mentioned with Hockey East, if they can get in more than 2 teams, then that puts a crimp in if the NCHC gets 2 or 3 or how many teams that they get in. So
sure enough,
it's not just about what the conference, the NCHC is doing. It's you got to put it in the context of the nation as a whole.
Hockey East gets 3.
You think so?
Hockey East gets 3 on the backs of
It is
just
you want to make
Penn
State
being terrible, and therefore like all of the pairwise bumps from.
Well, and that's another. I mean, maybe do we expect the Big Ten to be as good as they did last year? It's tough to be better than what they were last year. I mean, there was one point later in the season where 6 teams were inside the pairwise gate, and they ended up getting 4: Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. Yeah, that's because Notre Dame was out, Michigan State was out. Yeah, so they just got 4, in Wisconsin, of course. And so they just got 4, but do we expect them to have another? I mean, that's more than half of the teams in their league, which is always a sign that that's a very strong league. And they damn well near got 5 teams in. So it's hard to replicate that kind of success. So if they drop down to 3 teams, then that opens another slot. Then you think, how's the CCHA going to shake out? Because we don't think Mankato is going to be as good. And so it's going to be wide open. The Wild West, I think, will be apt this year. And the East has question marks. And yeah, this will be a fun year. Yep. No real prohibitive favorite nationwide. And I think that's a good thing.
And NCHC last year, we got 3 in, right?
Correct. St. Cloud, Western,
and Denver. And we were the only team to win.
That's right. Game. That's correct. So yep, we'll keep you updated as far as when. Follow Weldie there on the X about when we're gonna drop that preview podcast. But it's coming up.
There's a song by Exhibit called X, and
that makes sense.
And I have that in my head right now, and I don't hate it. So if you get a chance, you should YouTube X by Exhibit. It's pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say
that is our banger.
It's a song.
Banger of the week.
Banger of the week
by Weldie.
I'll create a soundbar for that too, and it'll be Ricky Martin singing "She Bangs."
There you go.
The She Bangs of the week. So, one other piece of news before we head to questions: Too Many Men on the Ice no longer reviewable this year. The powers that be got together and said, "Hey, this rule was stupid, and reviews are dumb. So let's get rid of this one at least." And apparently, everyone agreed. So, I believe the Huskies have been burned on that multiple times.
Well, the only one that I can remember off the top of my head was a playoff game in Grand Forks. So like 2017? I think it was in the first iteration of the podcast. And one of those games, I'm going to say the first game of that series, it was a egregiously BS call that Motzko rightfully lost his crap about. Because I think that one was one where it was like a player coming off the ice it was like a shift change situation.
Yeah.
And like
the puck was already in the offensive zone, and we were like
nowhere
in the
close.
Boards.
I think it was a power play. Nowhere close. I'm going to say it was Blake Winicky was the player who was coming off the ice. And it was like his leg was just dangling from the ice to the boards as he's hopping over the boards. And they ended up reviewing a goal that they scored based on that, and they took it away. That's the only one offhand that I remember. But I'm sure I don't doubt that that's been an issue other than that. But yeah, agreed with the sentiment that the less reviews, the better. And especially for a real ticky-tacky reason such as this. I mean, there's been...
It was one of those things that like there wasn't even a situation where it was like, oh, this has to be reviewable now. It was just like, why is this a thing? They just...
I can remember it might have been it's either Too Many Men or maybe it was an Offsides review. The first one, this was like 7-8 years ago. I remember it'd be a BC and UMass game where there was I'm thinking it was a Too Many Men, and it was an egregious one. It was like where 6 guys were actually on the ice, like playing. Like it's not like a guy was going off on a shift, and just somehow the refs missed it. and they scored a goal off of it. And I think it was like the game-winning goal. That might have been the impetus, because that's always how these things, these dumb rules come out, is because one example, and then you've got to put in a new rule that sort of overcompensates. And so, if my memory serves me correctly, it may have been an offside call too, but they shouldn't review goals based on missed offsides infractions either. Should get rid of that. From my perspective, the news here is that's a good start. Getting rid of too many men reviews. Let's keep going. Keep going with getting rid of reviews. So, yeah, that's what I'll say. Good start.
Indeed. We do have some questions here. Anything else you kind of want to go over for this August off-season pod? I can't think of anything.
I think we're good for now.
We did talk about birthstones for a little bit longer than I thought we would, but
and we front loaded that at the beginning.
We front loaded that. We said, hey, you know what should be the lead story? December's 3 birthstones.
Yes, and
that apparently you can just pick.
Yep.
So, voice of the in-person Huskies, Jason Bryant, who's been incredibly busy on his podcast of his own and with his wrestling, trying to grapple with all of the changes. You like that? I really wanted to work that in there. All of the changes with the conferences and the shuffling and what that means for, not just college football, but, some of those other sports too that don't get obviously the TV revenue that college football does. But anyway, he's been, kind of a top follower when it comes to that wrestling news, and something that I never thought I'd be that kind of interested in. And he makes it really fun, really interesting. So, but he asked for my pick here for a college hockey podcast outside of this one that to listen to. And I said, you've already got this one. You don't need anything else.
It's really, I think the best answer. I trashed him earlier, but I do listen to Wodon and Mike McMahon during the season when they have their CHN podcasts. I think they're mildly entertaining. They usually have a guest on, like a coach generally. And sometimes I fast forward through that segment if it's not a compelling guest, but those can be interesting. Like one time they had a guy that worked for a design, like architecture company that was building a bunch of these new hockey arenas.
I was going to say, is it a website building about why their stats can't get updated correctly?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Should have had that.
Different, not a data science
architect.
But don't ask him.
Ask him about that. But I do listen to that one.
I'm even nervous talking about it here that he's going to come and like.
Yeah, because I'm saying we listen to him. It's a very mutual relationship because he listens to ours. Based on
his ears are everywhere. I don't trust it.
All the great stuff we say about him and his arguments.
Hanging over my shoulder right now.
So I do listen to that one. I tried to listen to the Ustro. The Ustro has one. It just wasn't really. I wasn't really digging it. So of those two, I do prefer the CHN one. I listen to the Rink Live one from every now and then, not every one. And I'm glad that you brought up the Hatton episode with Robbie Jackson. I should check that one out.
I had like 4 questions for him, so that was a good one. I haven't listened to Ustro in a while. Is their audio quality still abysmal?
I remember a couple of years ago, like trying one out, and I think it was sort of poor audio. Not like ours, obviously, authority to talk, but their audio wasn't great. But there can be a tendency, especially in national coverage, where you just put on 7 pairs of kid gloves, and it's just we're only going to talk to the coach, and we're only going to ask him the questions that aren't going to ruffle any feathers. And we're just going to give you this really sterile version of analysis. I hope that our listeners gather from us that we come with a little fire. We come with a little bit of hot takes from now and then, and opinions that from time to time are negative of the Huskies, which Not sure if that's something that people don't care for, but I don't care for I call it kind of the Bally Sports approach, where it's just you can't say a bad word about the team that you cover, and everything's hunky dory. Doesn't matter if we're in last place or first place. It's kind of the same tone. That's sort of what I gathered from us, Joe, and it's kind of a turn off for me. But I do listen to we have another St. Cloud State podcast out there, and I do listen to the Huskies Warming House Den.
Mm-hmm.
I'm jealous about they seem to get the tech a little bit more than we do, because I'll generally watch it on YouTube, the video feed. And so I do listen to that one. I don't, other than the ones I've mentioned, I don't think I listen to any other college hockey podcast. But one main reason is that there just aren't a ton of them. College hockey is a fairly niche sport, and we're lucky in St. Cloud land to have multiple podcasts dedicated to SCSU hockey.
And what I really like also about the guys over at the Warming House is I think we serve completely different audiences.
I think that's true. They're a little younger, so they're going to come at it with a little bit more modern approach.
Yeah,
let's put it this way. I don't know if they're going to spend half an hour talking about Billy Hengen.
Billy Hengens. Yeah, right. Exactly.
But hopefully our audience doesn't mind the difference. We don't want them to be the same podcast.
Exactly. And I do appreciate that theirs comes out usually a day earlier, so I can make sure we're not rehashing some of the same topics and whatnot. So the people who do listen to both are able to kind of get at least a different perspective on it. And also, like you said, they're, I think they're going to be a little bit of rebranding and going into a little bit more just college hockey, where they did spend a lot more time on NHL and everything along those lines, which was fine. My whole thing about it was that just front load with the St. Cloud State stuff and then add on the NHL stuff at the end, because
what we do. You're just front loaded with birthstones,
with Chargers and birthstones,
right?
Just glass houses here.
Nickel's worth of free advice from us. Listen to how we started this podcast, and then stick to the script.
Right. Yeah. Right now they're actually doing previews and breakdowns of actual teams that are coming up in the season, and here we are talking about birthstones and Billy Hengen games from 20 years ago. Oh, wow. What are we doing?
Gotta love the summer pods.
Right. Exactly. So again, different folks, but yeah, that's, but you could tell that they have I guess more of a passion for the actual sports analysis radio, actual side of it. Whereas we're just schmucks with microphones, just having a good time.
Yes. So you can really tell the difference based on the technical problems that we have that they don't seem to ever have.
Exactly. I've thought about upgrading my microphone.
See, I don't even think it's a mic issue. I think we have the right equipment. I just don't know where to plug it in and calibrate it correctly. So yeah.
But one that I really liked that went away, but then kind of came back this last couple of episodes was College Hockey Today. And that one was that one was with Schlossman and Nate Ewell from College Hockey Inc.
I don't remember I don't remember that was the title of it, but I do remember back in the day listening to a couple of those. Maybe Us Cho hosted that at some point. Because I know they offer some other podcasts that's not just Us Cho writers, but somewhere I did listen to that. I think that Nate Ewell doesn't work for College Hockey Inc. or whatever the organization is. I think he moved on to an NHL team. So,
but Jason, and I'm going to butcher his last name because I've only seen it in print.
Was it their old SID?
The old SID,
Haydu or something.
Haydu,
something with a J that seemed like it doesn't belong there. Yeah.
But I think they had a couple episodes in March, as well, kind of bringing back the same type of structure.
Oh, okay.
And
so you're saying that one of your favorite hockey podcasts is a North Dakota podcast.
It was college hockey today, so they did cover everything.
Also, it was just like a nationwide focus, not just North Dakota.
Exactly. It was they just did a great job of focusing on everything. And say what you want about Schlossman, and people definitely do. But I do think he's one of the most knowledgeable writers when it comes to college hockey.
I like him.
Sometimes he can get a little ridiculous at times when it comes to like some of the stats that he puts out and plays with some numbers, maybe a little bit and too much.
He's someone that he doesn't strike me as like a partisan. As far as like it's all through a North Dakota lens, and North Dakota is the best ever. And he's he's had plenty of opportunity over the last couple of years to be critical of North Dakota, and he hasn't minced words when they're deserved. So I do give him props for that. Mm-hmm. And he's got it just coming from the upper Midwest, he's got a great North Dakota accent. And I like that because it reminds me of home.
Yep. So, and then a couple other fan ones that I like, that I listen to every once in a while, is that there's one from Michigan Tech that's actually Chasing McNaughton is one good that title. So they have a really good one, and I was actually maybe a little inside information, but I was going to be a guest on their podcast, and we were in kind of the talks about guesting on each other's podcasts for the Michigan Tech if Huskies were matched up against Michigan Tech in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So we were going to have kind of a guest appearance on both sides, but obviously we don't know anyone who cares about Mankato that much, so we didn't do that. So
Michigan Tech, you mean?
No,
it's like bad.
No, we didn't.
Oh, as far as when the Huskies played Mankato.
When the Huskies played.
Got it.
And I'm pretty sure their recap of the Michigan Tech game against Penn State wasn't.
That probably was not very happy.
Not pretty. So, but that's a good one, and they get guests on that. I think they had Don Lucia on an episode once. So they hustle on that podcast. They do a really good job too. So
thanks for the recommendation. I did not know that one existed.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a shame that we don't play them anymore. Like, are out of the conference. Like, get them back on the schedule. That's a bus trip, and a scenic one at that.
And actually, Dan Jacobson has a question about, what is one college hockey road trip that you would like to do before you die? And that actually is my pick. Is Northern Michigan Tech.
Lump in Lake State at the same time. Just do all the UP schools.
Just do all the UP school. And then I would love to do it in October.
Yeah. That would be the best time to do it.
Yeah, just early, scenic, and I've heard so many just stories. I'd like to just walk around their campuses and everything along those lines. So that's actually my trip, and it's like you said, it's easily doable. I just need to find time. Maybe when I'm retired, in 40 years or whatnot, I'll be able to have some time and drag my wife to go and go to some of these games and just go to those old barns too. And
that would certainly be a good one. It certainly is on my list. I have not gone to Michigan Tech before, even when St. Cloud was in their conference.
And their fans, obviously the band.
I've driven by
the one
arena,
of the best, but
in the summertime. But I never gone to a game. That's actually one I've probably been to 15 or 16 rinks total. I don't know the exact count, but that's actually one where my dad has been to and I have not. My dad, it's not like he really travels, but he had a friend that from my hometown that played. He was the goalie on Michigan Tech's last national title team. They played the Gophers either back-to-back years or 3 straight years in the mid-'70s for the national title game. And the Gophers, I think it was 3 in a row. The Gophers won 2, and then Michigan Tech won one of them. And so Michigan Tech was great back then. And so this guy who Bruce Horsch is his name, and he stayed in Houghton after he graduated, and he became like a teacher, I think, in the area. And so he still lives up there. And a couple years ago, he invited my dad and a couple of other of his friends from Minnesota to go up to watch a game on that Winter Carnival weekend that they have in like February or whatever it is, big deal in Houghton. And so he took in a game in that weekend, and I was jealous because I'm like, boy, that one is one certainly on my bucket list. Another kind of trip that because I've only really
just to put a pin in that. 74. Minnesota won 4-2 against Michigan Tech. 75, Michigan Tech won 6-1, and then 76, 6-4, Minnesota over Michigan Tech.
So it was a big rivalry back then. It's the Herb Brooks days and John McInnes for Michigan Tech, and so heated rivalry back then, and so that's the last of Michigan Tech's natties. I think they won a couple, like when Tony Esposito was their goalie, like in the 60s. They've got a couple. Rich history there. One of the oldest programs in college hockey. And yeah, certainly on the bucket list. And yeah, I just started traveling for the Huskies games like right at the tail end of the WCHA era. And so never was able to make it up there. So hopefully there'll be some time that I do get up there. The other sort of area of the country that I'd love to go, like, so I've only been like
1962,
east.
7-1 against Clarkson.
Okay. So just, they have the two natties. Just 62 and 75. Okay. Now we know that trivia question. But yeah, so I've only been east. As far as my eastern rinks, I've been to Northeastern and BC when the Huskies played out there, 2018? And those were good. I mean, Matthews in particular for Northeastern. I actually was really disappointed with BC's arena. It was kind of a dump. But Matthews for Northeastern, which is like super old. It might be the oldest rink currently. And it used to be an NHL rink. The Bruins used to play there in like the 20s. So that's certainly a good one. And then
Michigan Tech also won in 65.
Oh, really? So they got 3.
8-5 against Boston, or 8-2 against Boston College.
Look at you, fact checking on the fly. Love it.
My frozen in time history of U.S. men's
there you
college
go.
hockey.
That is our book plug of the week, Frozen in Time. So I did that Boston trip, and then I had to work like 2 weeks for a job I spent in Buffalo, New York for 2 weeks. It's like the setup to a bad joke, I know. Spent 2 weeks in February in Buffalo. During that time, I went to a Niagara game because they're close by. So that's very random that my 3
I heard there's a waterfall nearby too.
A little bit of one. And I drove by it as I went to the rink. And so of my 3 rinks that I've visited in the East, it's been BC, Northeastern, and Niagara. So I would like to like hit a bunch, especially the old ones, like the old Ivy League schools. The thing is, like, because you play basically Fridays and Saturdays, it's not like I can knock off 6 on a weekend unless I'm seeing just like one period at one. That's not really what I want to do. I want to take in a full game.
Yeah.
So I'd have to like be there for like several weeks in a row and just hit Princeton. You know, that's one where that's a super old rink as well. Hobie Baker rink, Harvard, Yale. Do a lot of those old school ones. I've heard Vermont's a good one, old barn type building. Maine would be a good one. So any like the New England schools, especially ones with a little bit of history, those would be nice to pick off. But if it's, St. Cloud so rarely plays out there that I'd have to be going at a non-St. Cloud weekend that they don't play out there most likely. And so it'd be tough to arrange that. But like you said, maybe that's like a retirement trip just to go out there and spend a couple of weeks just kind of hopping from college town to college town up in that area and just see a game in a couple of those areas. So that would be another kind of one that I've always wanted to do, is pick off some of those old school ones on the East Coast. Alaska, that's another one. I've never been up there. And it'd be kind of fun to travel to haul up there. Especially if the future of the program isn't exactly secure for either of those programs. It'd kind of be nice to at least check those off the list sometime too. But going to Miami this year, it'll be the first time I go there, and so I'm excited to see that one. It'll be the last college that I've been to in the conference. I need to go back to CC because I haven't been to their new arena since they opened that one. But everyone else I've been to more than once. Like I've seen both Omaha rinks. I've seen Denver, North Dakota. I didn't go to the deck, which I'm sad to say. You saw a game at the deck, like a Duluth game when they're still playing at the deck, right?
No, well, I saw a high school hockey game there, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
but not a college game.
It wasn't a college game, but a high school.
Because I've heard that was an interesting rink to play at. 'Cause it was so small and
it was so small. It was like the section 8 final, and one of the coaches took the 3 seniors of our hockey team on a road trip up to Duluth. And I've lived in southwestern Minnesota. So, I mean...
It's a haul.
It was definitely a haul. So
would this have been like Duluth East? Who was playing the game, do you remember?
God, I do not know.
Because they still play those section finals. Now they play them at Amsoil. But I mean, if you're talking in your early 2000s, I mean, it's a good guess that Duluth East was involved because they seemingly were there every year. I'm going to say like Duluth East and Greenway.
Well, I think actually
Grand Rapids.
Man, I'm trying to think.
I'm not even sure if. Well, no, Section 8 is like Moorhead. That's like because Duluth East is in that weird Section 7.
Yeah,
I mean that's Andover. It goes like
7.
South to Andover, but then it spans up to Duluth.
I think it was the year Anoka won the title.
Okay,
and that was
they might have been in the section then.
Yeah, so
if Andover's in that section, it might have stretched down to Anoka County. It's possible.
2000, because it was my senior year, so it was 2003 Class AA.
Doing an impromptu
section
random box score pull up.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to find it in this amount of time.
Well, whatever the case, I'm still jealous that you're actually able to at least see a hockey game there.
Yeah, and like just opera style seating, and you were right on top of the ice, opera style, so you're like looking straight down on the ice. And not only that, but like the dimensions, I think, were like 189 by 70 something. Like it was ridiculously small.
Quick, while you look that up, favorite opera?
I've never been to an opera. A true opera. Like, are we talking like Broadway plays? Yeah, I've been to
opera
dozens.
Tuxedo,
opera,
Top Hat, Cane,
nope.
Fred Astaire style, Scarf. I'm gonna go with Aida because it's always in crosswords. It's got 3 vowels in 4 letters.
There you go.
No, I've never seen it, but it's my favorite one.
Okay. Well, that's
we got birthstones, we got opera, and everything in between.
I don't know if I can even name another opera.
Oh, I can name like 10.
Yeah? No, I don't think.
Madame Butterfly, La Traviata. Magic Flute.
Okay, now you're just naming everything up.
No, these are operas. It's like, if you do any practice for like Jeopardy, because they'll have an opera category.
Oh, okay.
And it's simple, like, because they're really only picking like from 10 operas. It's not like you have to memorize the entire songbook of Giuseppe Verdi and get some obscure operas. They're just selecting like those 10 most well-known ones. So,
Carmen,
you're putting me on a spot right now, but I gave you like 4 or 5.
Carmen. My answer is Carmen.
That's Bizet.
Yep, exactly. Just because that's always in figure skating. It's a very popular figure skating routine. Which
Habanera, I believe, is the aria from Carmen that they always play for the figure skating.
Yep. So Teresa's what? Oh, she's got a flower in her hair. She's doing Carmen, and sure enough, that's always the case.
So it's kind of like
if you see a red flower in a woman of women's figure skating hair, you know she's doing Carmen.
So it's almost kind of like an overdone, like cliche at this point. It's almost like you're losing creativity points if you're putting on Carmen.
But it gets the crowd going, so that I mean, people are clapping along, and then people clapping along. Well, judges will think it's better than that.
It's like
two figure skaters in the '88 Olympics did the same.
Stoico.
No, it was Katarina Witt was one of them.
Okay.
And then there was the dueling Carmens, like the best two figure skaters in the world were both doing Carmen.
Was it another woman? Oksana Bayul.
The Ukrainian jewel, Oksana Bayul? No.
I've been too early for Nancy Kerrigan.
Yeah. I don't think
then
she
I'm
was...
basically out on female figure skaters. Well, Michelle Kwan, but way too early for her. See, I can name like Brian Boitano, but that's obviously a male figure skater. Scott Hamilton.
Debbie Thomas.
I have heard of her.
Yep, 88 Olympics.
I would have been able to say that she was a figure skater, but I have heard the name. Debi.
Yep.
Kind of a weird spelling. Okay. We are in the ditch. From opera to figure skating. Well, figure skating, he's got skates and ice, so it's sort of adjacent to hockey. So we're not completely in the ditch.
But
I think it was a worthy conversation.
Well, also, that was the Battle of the Carmens because Debbie Thomas and Katarina Witt both skated. But also on the men's side was the Battle of the Bryans.
That was Brian Boitano.
That was Brian Boitano.
Brian Orser.
There you go, Brian Orser.
Because he comes up in crosswords too. He's got that last name's got a
Brian
lot of
Orser
letters.
is like the Jesus of figure skating coaching right now.
Really?
Like he is like the Messiah of figure. Like everybody wants to be coached by Brian Orser, except if you're Russian, then you want to be doped up and you're like coached by
different approach.
The one girl with the frizzy hair who always teaches the fluts. But
there we go.
But yes, so there was the Battle of the Bryans and the Battle of the Carmens in the '88 Olympics in Calgary.
There we go.
And I want to say who won the gold? Did Orser or Boitano? I think Brian Boitano won.
Who was the American? Who was the Canadian?
Brian Boitano was the American. Brian Orser's. Yeah.
I think it was Boitano.
God, Teresa's going to be so mad if I get this wrong.
I'm really looking forward to her critique of this segment. Especially the opera and the figure skating.
Especially
we just need to get some Jane Austen references in here, and it'll be a real summer podcast.
Especially her going at like me not remembering what the Russian coach's name too. She's I'm going to have a correction
at the radio right
week,
now at her speaker.
Yep, Brian Boitano won the gold, and Orser was. Although Orser won 5-4 split. What a haymaker between the two. So anyway, that's your figure skating update there. And then just off season. Anything that you're kind of doing or watching, just kind of pass the time when it comes to it.
Well, as I've mentioned previously, I've been in this pretty much all calendar year of watching movies from the years 1971 through 73. I've sort of stalled on that lately, but so I'm maybe not watching as many as I had been in previous months. But there's one interesting trend of the early 70s is movies with crazy long titles. I feel like they don't do that as much anymore. So like the last one I saw is a movie called I gotta like clear my throat here because it's the entire title is "Who is Harry Kellerman and why is he saying those terrible things about me?" The Dustin Hoffman film.
Oh,
it's pretty decent. It's on YouTube for free if you want to ever check it out. Shel Silverstein does the music for that. You heard correct.
Interesting.
There's another movie in that same sort of
The
long
Giving
title
Tree himself
vein called. It's a Paul Newman directed film called
The Sting.
That would have been in that time period, and that's a great movie. I think it would have been the same year, 73, that he directed. He directed his wife, Joanne Woodward, in the film The Effect of Gamma Rays on Man in the Moon Marigolds, which is like this crazy, like depressing family drama about a single mom. It's actually really good. It's kind of a downer. That one also free on YouTube if you want to check it out, but I do like those crazy long titles like that. A lot of them were like stage adaptations. So maybe it was like more dramatists were going hog wild on crazy long titles back then. But those are good. I actually have watched some recent stuff. I watched because I've been reading some stuff, just people like hyperventilating about praise about the series called The Bear. Did you watch that at all?
Yep.
I thought it was good. I didn't think it was quite near the level of expectation that seemingly was set by the reviews.
Sure.
And maybe that's not fair, but I thought it was decent. And I'll probably will watch if they do a third season. I probably will. I did have some issues with it, but
I'm
it was enjoyable to watch it.
I'm a couple episodes into the second season right now. But like the first
season... I thought the second season was a dip. I thought the first season was better. No pun intended, because they're doing the Italian beef sandwiches, which can be dipped at certain times if you order it that way. But I thought the first season was better. It seems like the critics thought the second season was better. I thought that the direction they went in the second season was distracting from the tone they set in the first season. That was actually one of the major problems I had with it. But sure. I thought it was still decent. How about you?
As far as like TV or anything, I think I'm one of the only people that has Netflix that isn't watching Suits.
I've heard that's like top of the charts for
like
Netflix.
Top of the charts right now for streaming, which, it's, I know we talked about AMC a little bit earlier, but
it's the maker of the Gremlin, the compact car of the 70s.
The USA Network, God, did they have some good shows? Like
Psych.
Suits was on, Psych, Burn Notice, Monk. They had what felt like hit after hit. When it comes to shows, Characters Welcome, and that's what I think all of those shows. I mean, I really got into Psych for a little bit. But as of right now, I'm not really kind of watching anything. Only Murders in the Building is
still do check that out. I think
for season 3. I'm excited for that. Watching that. New episode goes back tomorrow. I'm sorry.
I did go out.
I didn't mean to date the episode like that, but next. So
my office that I now work at took out whoever wanted to go and paid for the office to see Oppenheimer. Did you see that? Or Barbie,
nope.
Which is like the other like double feature that everybody was seeing?
Nope. I can't remember the last movie I watched. Mario movie?
That was the first movie I'd seen in the theater in Arizona. The last movie I'd seen in the theater was 1917. Not the year, but the movie called 1917, which came out in like 2019. That's like an Abbott and Costello routine there. Like What'd you see? 1917. When did you see it? 2019. Was it 2019 or 1917? You could write a decent bit with that material. But so whenever that came out, that's the last movie I'd seen in the theater. This one had like the plush recliners. And it seemed like they kind of have redone movie theaters to make them a little bit more luxury experience. I thought the movie again was sort of middling, much too long.
Oppenheimer or 1917?
Oppenheimer. 1917 I liked better. Oppenheimer was like an hour too long. Like they could have easily cut out whole swaths like of that movie. Film. Yeah, the whole Robert Downey Jr. performance, which I thought was decent, but all of that could have been cut out, I thought, and probably for the better. But yeah, so I've actually seen a movie in the theater, which it's unusual for me. But.
Sure enough. Yeah, nope. I've been trying to learn how to code, so I've taken an online class and taken Python right now, and did a little bit of SQL, and just trying to. That's kind of actually what's a lot of my time.
Will those skills help us get better tech for this podcast?
Tech, no.
I feel like it's got to help in some regard.
It could help if I really wanted to apply it, but I got to learn it first.
Yeah, just learn like an algorithm.
I actually thought because they talk about like building your portfolio and whatnot, and I actually thought of like putting together a Tableau portfolio of Minnesota's college hockey recruits and where they're from, just to kind of see an overlay of like the last 20 years where some of the big recruits kind of came from, of all of the Minnesota schools. Just kind of
shame that you can't feed or you can't use the college hockey stats.net to feed in as your sort of source of all those numbers. If only
I would be able to.
A reliable site.
Yeah,
that had
I would be able to up until 2021. Yeah.
Oh, right, but I mean that doesn't help us for.
No, but like some of those backdates, as long as that website's up, I'd be able to access and run a Python code and
you probably would just go with what like birthplace or like the high school that they went to and played at.
Hometown. So like there's always like a little bit of gray area there, but like technically TJ Oshie's hometown is listed at War Road. In a lot of places, even though he was born in Washington and most of his life spent in Washington. So,
but there could be some gray areas there as far as
there could be quite a few gray areas. Yeah,
born somewhere else, like
then I'll
grew
just
up the majority of their time somewhere else, but then played high school somewhere else. So there could be some toughies, but if you ever get that done, send it over. I'd be intrigued.
Just kind of or like even like in the metro, like if there's a specific area where one college recruits a lot better, or one country. I feel like we're do pretty well in Finland, you know, things like that. So,
yeah, that sounds.
But like, I have no clue where a lot of like Duluth's players are from. Bemidji's players, I assume, all Canada. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Duluth's probably getting a little bit more of the Iron Range area than Twin Cities, but I'm sure a fair amount of Twin Cities guys too. It'd be interesting if you're going way back, like because I remember a couple years ago when in the Class A section of the tournament, Minneapolis made it.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first time in decades that they had made the state tournament. And that was just how they were referred to, Minneapolis, as in the small schools.
The small schools, yeah.
But like you go back to like the 30s and 40s and 50s, it was like St. Paul Johnson, then Minneapolis would have a couple of great, that would be like the powerhouse of, other than like the far north, they would have those. But you can kind of chart how suburbs became the dominant means or pipeline for talent. Like you can see when Edina emerged as like the powerhouse, and then the decline of Minneapolis proper. I think that would be kind of interesting.
And then the rise of private schools,
right?
The Benildes and the Cretans and along those lines. The
you got a good idea there.
So I don't know. I got to learn the code first. So I'm trying. So that's what I'm doing. So anyway, that about does her. I mean, that's 2 hours. And again, 30 minutes.
There was barely any news. Yeah.
Any news? Couple of weeks though, we'll have some previews, maybe some guests. Maybe we'll get the KVSE guys on. I'll talk to them. But I think a little bit. I think we can get something on the schedule. I know Alex and Brian were asking me about it, so I think it'd be fun to get them on. Maybe we can trade that in for a plug. No, I was listening to the great Huskies Hockey Podcast.
Yep.
Boom. Just name drop us.
Get that on the air during a game this year.
Right? Exactly.
You could make it.
So, that about does her. I'm Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers.
Sure to hit him up on X through that handle. And then if you don't do X, you can always email me at huskieshockeypodcast@gmail.com. I haven't gotten an email in a while, so someone send me an email. Dan Jacobson, let me know how your summer's been doing.
What's a review of Oppenheimer?
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure you saw it opening night. He double featured it with Barbie.
Barbenheimer.
Let me know where my brief review went wrong.
Yeah.
And let me know.
Until next time, go Huskies.